Alright, so on the 8th of December, Sorare released this Medium article explaining exactly what's happening to the thresholds. If you don't know, I'll give it a quick update on what's actually happened, and then beyond that, I'll explain how I think this affects you, how I think people should be adapting their strategy very slightly, but obviously it all depends on your own circumstances, so I'll explain that in a bit. So a quick recap of what they've actually done. In Limited, the thresholds are now $5, in Rare it's $50, in Super Rare it's $100, and Unique is $250. In order to get this, you can get it every single game week as long as you hit 250 points, but the key is there's a 240 point cap on the last 15 average. So your last average has to add up to a total of less than 240 or equal to 240. And this makes it a little more difficult. On top of that, this now excludes XP bonuses and captain bonuses. So they've definitely made it harder to achieve, but now they've spread the E thresholds across different scarcities. I think it's better for the platform overall. So let me explain how it might affect you. So the cap is without doubt the hardest part, right? Because you now need players that are going to score over what they previously scored. Because they average 240, you're going to need them to consistently score over that and score 250. So that can be slightly difficult. If you look at it per player, it's about 48 per player, 48 points per player. I've broken it down here slightly different because I think it's probably better to have your goalkeeper come in slightly under because they don't have that high upside compared to an outfielder. So if you did 44 average for a goalkeeper and then 49 for everyone else, that seems more realistic. And then I've also simulated this without a goalkeeper because I know a lot of you will be trying it. It's the first thought I thought, right, I can move up to Super Rare, I can get $100 US every single week and just play without a goalkeeper. So we'll be assessing that situation as well. And sorry, I'll just say in that situation, you can have no goalkeeper and go up to an average of 60 points per player, which I think would be great. So then I've gone out and thought, right, if I was making a rare threshold team, who would I go after? Why would I go after them? And how would they score? So looking at this team, I've gone for the Belgian Pro League, right? And I've looked at a 5-man stack. It combines to a total of $1,500 US. And that is in Rare, obviously. In Limited, it's slightly under, about 104. It'll probably merge to about the 140 or 125. They'll probably be 10x of each other within time, I would suspect. But in terms of players, I've gone strictly in the Pro League. Why I've done that, I think it's just, a very reasonably fair price league. I think it's also got a lot of supply because we've had previous seasons of it. And I think it'll be a lot of, it'll hit home with a lot of you if that's kind of the area you're trying to target. So what I would keep in mind here is that yes, it's only one league, but the benefit of just playing in one league is that all your teams are always going to play at the same time. And in the Pro League specifically, they get 40 games a season, I think it is, which is obviously on the high side compared to most leagues. So you can see on screen, I've combined my players for a total of 240 points, a maximum cap, which is fantastic. I think the biggest issue people face is that when you're trying to cut down on the lowest budget, and this is one of the lowest teams budgets that I could produce in the Pro League, in terms I thought of who would hit the scores most consistently with, highest averages essentially. So all of these players should be pretty nailed. They're not guaranteed nailed, and this is what you see in, the 58%. So this will include different stats. This will include, for example, if they're on international duty and they didn't play, that will take it out of there. Any injuries they've had, or maybe they've only recently got the starting position. But all of these players should be starters. But I do want to rise to the point. The first risk is that over the last 40 games, they're averagely played only 58% of the time. Let's take off some of the international fixtures. Let's ignore the fact that if someone was injured, let's say that's 70%. So they all played together 75% of the time. I think that'll make it a little bit easier to understand. And then looking at the threshold returns, if you were to hit the threshold 29 times out of the 40 league season in Rare, you would be back to, paying off your full team essentially. And in Limited, it would be 20. The reason for that is obviously Limited cards are slightly undervalued. And I can't, like I said already, I kind of expect them to merge back up to Rares or Rare just come back down slightly. So they're in the kind of 10x range again. But essentially, let's call it, you need to hit the threshold 24 times between the scarcities over the whole season to get back your entire team stake. Now for me, that is a massive opportunity. I think that's absolutely fantastic. So when people say, Sorare, we're too harsh with taking away XP and taking away the 205 points, I completely disagree. Because if you can return your entire team budget, right, in one season, and you could, in fact, in theory, you could do it in half a season, I think that is fantastic for the game. And also, it will not be easy. So as I said before, there's a 58% chance that they all play together right now. And we're upping that to 75%. So if they all play together 75% of the time, so that, sometimes you're going to get DMP, sometimes they're going to get dropped and you need to bring in a new player, it will be at a maximum, 75% of the time you hit the threshold. I think realistically, I think 50 to 60% would be a really good outcome for people that know what they're doing, and 40 to 30% would be your kind of standard. Now, of course, these are projections. I have no stats to back this up because they've only just released today. But what I'm trying to drill home from this point is that you can do it over a whole season. You're going to need about a 60% strike rate. So as I said, if you were to hit the threshold 60% of the time, you'd be really good on getting your initial cost of the team back within one season. Including that, you would still have the cards for the rest of their utility for life, so you could either sell them or you could just keep doing what you're doing. But essentially, it will be very difficult because you need all of your players to score consistently, but they need to all outscore their averages. So I'll be interested to see how this works out. But we've seen it in basketball where, on the NBA side, it's not too unrealistic to consistently outscore your averages if you know what you're doing, if you have a big gallery of selection. Now, that big gallery of selection is a thing I really want to pinpoint on here, because like myself and like everyone else, I think everyone wants to get as much ETH as quickly as possible. But the problem is, I think in order to take advantage of that 60% strike rate, in order to hit a 60-70% strike rate, you're going to need to have depth in your teams. So the issue is, I wanted to go out and play in the Super Rare League, so I can afford a non-playing goalkeeper. But as you can see on screen here, a 4-man stack with the same players, so let's say we need 196%, we managed to save on our goalkeeper, it's still, you would need to hit 11 times to break even, but I don't think you'd be hitting 11 times in a season. You need all of your players to have like the best outscoring of their averages in one go. I really think you would need to hit it. You'd probably hit it once or twice a season. So I don't think a 4-man stack will actually work. So that's why I've got my super rare DMP goalkeeper up for sale. I don't think that's the option. If you thought a 4-man stack, but maybe you thought goalkeepers were overpriced, you could go with some of the best scorers on the platform. They might hold their value a little better. And in terms of that, I've gone for 241 points in this scenario. It doesn't really matter. Let's call it 240. They play together slightly more, 68%. Let's push that up to 80%, right? But the problem is here, you're actually already paying more than if you just went out and bought a goalkeeper in the first instance. That's $1,900 US compared to $1,400 US. So for me, the 4-man stack is just not going to work anymore. I think that's really good. It encourages people to buy goalkeepers and you can fit in as many teams as possible. But what this comes down to is you need to play it in your own scarcity. So they've removed Underdog, they've removed Specialist, and they're replacing it with this cap game mode. So this is the introductory phase to any division you're playing in. So yes, you want to be consistently hitting those thresholds, but you can also go out and venture into a new league where you try and hit the thresholds less frequently for a cheaper price. And I think what a lot of you will find, and you might find this out before getting involved in it when it starts on the 30th of January, or maybe take this advice now. I think a few of you, quite a lot of you, will be in the wrong division. I think a lot of you would have been forced into the rare division for the old thresholds, and I really think you should be moving down to the limited division. Now, you'll be looking at me and saying, oh, no, I don't want to do that. That's $45 less that I'm getting. But I think what the numbers on screen pinpoint now is that in order to hit the threshold, you're going to need to outscore your position on every player, right? Every single player is going to need to improve on their average, or at least one player is going to need to go massively above. So why it's so important is because that's such an unrealistic expectation if you can't select fixtures. That's such an unrealistic expectation if someone gets injured and you have no money to replace him, because then you're playing with 4 players and you're out completely. So I think the best strategy is to play limited if you're on a very small budget. If you can only afford 5-6 rare players, you should be dropping down to limited. I would take up probably a selection of 20 players that you pinpoint for the rare capped mode, and it would be one of your most important leagues, but maybe not the most important. You're always putting good players in there, but maybe you're not expecting to win it, because that's the one point I have missed out. These numbers wouldn't really make sense. If you need a 60% strike rate, and a 60% strike rate is going to be difficult to get all of your funds back, by the end of the year, it might be better to play another division. But in that 1 week where all your players massively outscore their average, you can still pick up points. And it's going to be, essentially the best player of the game, which I think is why it's so good. It's going to be much more skill-based rather than just, right, I'm going to put the best 5 players in the world in the team and hope they do well this week. And if they don't, it doesn't matter because I'll get them next week. So this is going to be a lot more particular in terms of your specialist knowledge. In terms of specialist knowledge, you need depth. And in terms of depth, you need funds for that. So I think a lot of people should be moving down to limited and competing. If they did have a rare threshold team with 1 goalkeeper, now you move down to limited and you can run that team for, 40 games a season. But now you've got additional funds because you've moved down, you've saved 10x essentially in terms of funding. You can go out and buy a different team. So this team could be an American team. So now you have an American and a European team. So what you'll get is more consistent scoring. So more consistently you'll reach the threshold. And it's kind of that hare or tortoise analogy where it's like sometimes it's better to go slower, you know, £5 more consistently rather than $50 once. Obviously, sorry for the dollars to pounds conversion, I'm sure you understand. But yeah, essentially, I think the slow and steady will win this because not only can they use those cards in the cap mode to win points, but if you've got an outlay of 15 players, let's say, you can play them in 2 other leagues. And these don't need to be competing to win the league. They can just be aiming for tier 2s. But if you can consistently pick up tier 2s after tier 2s after tier 2s, I think that will stead you in a much better stead than playing in the rare division. So if you know my gallery, if you've been watching my Sorare journey, you know, I have 4 or 5 super rares, right? So I could go out, get a goalkeeper and compete in super rare. But my advice to anyone watching this would be to not do that. You're going to need, as a rule for this video, let's see how this lasts over time. I think you will need 15 cards. You'll need 15 cards from that scarcity. If you have 15 or more cards in that scarcity, you can play that cap mode. If you can't get 15 cards, which are, you know, reasonable cards, which aren't DMPs and consistently play, move down in division. That's kind of what I expect from this update. It's going to be a lot harder than people think. The XP cap makes me need to outscore your averages. It is going to be severely difficult. And don't handicap yourself. You know, yes, the thresholds each week in terms of ETH will be so great because you're consistently picking up and you can buy who you want. But if you can consistently pick it up more often, pick up more cards, which you can then sell for ETH to then buy a player you like, I think that's a much better strategy. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I've sacked off the super rare plan. I'm going to be playing rare and limited. I want to have a strike rate of 60, 70% in limited. And I want a strike rate of maybe 30, 40% in rare because I'm only going to have 10 players. I'm not going to be able to play, you know, every single week with better fixture selection. So that's where I'll leave it for now. If you found this video interesting, let me know. Drop in the comments if you think, you know, I'm on the right path here. If you completely disagree with me, I'd happily, you know, have a discussion with anyone that thinks this is the incorrect method. If you think, you know, you can get 6 players or 7 players in the rare division and compete for the rare thresholds, all of the best to you. I just don't think it's reasonable anymore. Yes, you'll hit it, but I'm thinking less than 20% strike rate, which as you can see on screen would take forever to kind of earn back your initial team, and you can be doing much better in a lower division. So hopefully that levels out the playing field. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like, subscribe, and yeah, all the best to you. Cheers.